After making their statements, the chiefs and survivors will be available for a limited time for some questions. Questions will be limited to one per media organization. After statements from our honored guests, we will begin with approximately 20 minutes of in-person questions from the journalists in the room, and we will follow that with 20 minutes for questions from those who have joined us online. When you ask your question, please state your name and the name of your media organization. For journalists here in the room, microphones will be brought to you when you have a question. Just raise your hand and someone will get to you. For journalists in attendance online, please submit your question using the Q&A tool in Zoom. We will call on you by name and unmute your microphone in the meeting when it's your turn to ask a question. And I'll say right now, as time is limited, it's not likely there's going to be an opportunity to get to everyone. However, I'm pleased to let you know this event is being recorded and the recording will be available. That link will be sent out to everyone following the press conference. A friendly reminder now to please set your mobile devices to silent mode. We'll begin now with a statement from Grand Chief George Arcand Jr.
Tanse. Thank you, Brian. On behalf of the Confederacy of Treaty 6 First Nation, I welcome you all to Treaty 6 territory. Thank you for joining us today. I want to acknowledge the survivors here today, Victoria Arcand, Rod Alexis, and Gordon Burnstick, for bravely sharing your truths and opening your hearts to our guests here today. Hi. Many of our people have been asking for the Pope to visit our lands and to deliver an apology. This historical journey is an important part of their healing journey. My mind and heart are with survivors, how this will impact them, their families, and our communities. They have been carrying unimaginable trauma for many generations. For many, the acknowledgement of this pain and this important step towards reconciliation. I believe this apology is a beginning, a way forward for our people's road to healing. I have had the opportunity to spend time with many of our communities and people who survived residential schools. Hearing their stories and the suffering they lived through, it's too painful for me to even imagine how they survived. Many never made it home, and some could not continue to endure the pain after they left these institutions. Though these harms can never be undone, in order to forget, I do believe there has to be forgiveness. If you want to put this pain behind and rebuild as a people, survivors have identified that this is a necessary step. Only through forgiveness can we build new bridges and rebuild our communities. These events are intended for survivors. We understand many Indigenous people feel strongly about the Pope Francis's visit. I ask for your kindness towards the survivors who feel this closure is what they need. Keep them in your hearts and in your prayers. This is an important historical moment for survivors of residential school system and the harm caused by the Catholic Church. We understand that many people want to come and experience the event in person. The papal visit are for survivors and for Indigenous people in search of answers, the truth and validation. The harms cannot be undone, but it is important for us to come together this way to support one another. We are welcoming guests from across the world to participate in this long overdue apology. Most importantly, survivors, their families, and communities. It doesn't end here. There's a lot to be done. This is only the beginning. Hi, hi.
We'll now hear from Louis Bull Tribe Chief Desmond Bull.
Tanse, my name is Desmond Bull. My Cree name is Okimakapau. I am the chief of the Louis Bull tribe, one of the 4 First Nations that are part of the Maskwacis of this Treaty 6 territory. Thank you for being here today. This historic event is one I did not expect to experience in my lifetime. I don't think we could have anticipated an event like this 2 decades ago. It was only when our children were beginning to be found in mass graves, which garnered international attention, that brought light to this painful period in our history. I'm a day school survivor and a product of intergenerational trauma. I was robbed of my language. I am now slowly relearning and reclaiming it. I'm grateful to witness an admission of truth so we can reconcile and hopefully bring peace to future generations. The events next week may weigh heavily and open wounds for survivors. I ask survivors, please be strong during this time and seek out support service to assist you in coping with your trauma. Remember, we are here with you and we are supporting you. The Pope's visit may mean something different to each person. It is an understanding to say there are mixed emotions about the papal's upcoming visit. I feel we need to be prepared for the fallout from these events. There must be enough mental health support and hotline resources available to help the thousands of people who will be dealing with the aftermath for the weeks, months, and years to come. Our people should also look to ceremonies and medicinals to help heal. With the events, the world is learning more of our history. We are the subject of conversations happening in homes across this country. I feel the attitudes are shifting and hearts are opening to us as who we are as people. Remember that however these events may make you feel, your feelings matter and you are not alone. Hi, hi.
Ermineskin Cree Nation Chief Randy Ermineskin.
Igen, naskom taga kio pe witzea pe tohta ya omam tan stay gom gawi pe so pota e gwa mina naskom taga kio yo kaya so geta meg e ga po meg ka kami mo ek mina wawasin am sigasan ya e gwa tan vamos a estar en Mamtonesta man tan soma visto tan set que testa ka sino go te petro tetso saim heuino. My name is Chief Randy Ermineskin and from Ermineskin Cree Nation, one of the host nations in Maskwacis that for the Pope's visit. It has taken long, and we are grateful for this day that has finally come, that will be taking place in our homelands of Maskwacis. As a survivor, I have seen the pain and witnessed the sorrow. Just seeing pictures of the schools, remembering the hallways, the classrooms, how students were treated, it will trigger emotions, definitely. And as a chief, a friend, a relative, a member of this community, our nation, I'm here to support and help those who will have a difficult time. To listen on behalf of those who are no longer with us, as I promised that I would. For survivors from coast to coast, this is an opportunity, the first and maybe last for some, to perhaps find some closure for themselves and their families. This will be a difficult process, but it's a necessary one. There are certain themes that we need to pay attention to: truth, justice, healing, and reconciliation. We want the truth about what happened at these schools to be shared to the public, to be shared by educators. And the media, you have a role as well to tell the truth. Everyone needs to know what happened to us and that it will never happen again. This is once in a lifetime event for many of us. It's important that we support each other as we navigate through this healing process. The support we need now is critical during, after. This has ongoing and the feelings that will come next week will not just disappear, they'll continue to persist. We must continue to monitor conversations either on social media, but we must keep supporting the people that are, and let them know that there are services available and helps available to help them, guide them through this process, because it's not going to be an easy one. This apology will be a fundamental step towards forgiveness, closure, healing, and reconciliation. Tapon
And we'll now hear from Alexis Nakota Sioux Nation Chief Tony Alexis.
Hello and thank you for being here with us today. Todevi sodi stuchumuzab no nanaha banin. Wakana gasim natuan in Tugana dacha in which tamne timani himnati wastigna timani bina wahnab wanikiki waste ikchinom lachinigi vistukin. Wakas ichin awasino. The Pope's presence at our annual pilgrimage at Lac-Saint-Anne is a historical moment that many of our people have been waiting for. We have a name for the lake. It is known in my community as Wakamne. Wakamne translates to God or holy, and Ne translates to lake. This lake has great spiritual significance and is known for its healing waters. Wakamne has been used by First Nations peoples for generations long before settlers came. And maybe unknowingly, this was a place of reconciliation, the coming together of two worlds, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, when the first pilgrimage to these shores was in 1889. To this day, thousands of people from all across North America make this trip to the site to be healed, pray, and receive its blessings. For some of our people, Pope Francis's visit evokes complex feelings. My hope is that much like Wakamne and its healing abilities, the apology brings healing to survivors and their families. Pope Francis's apology is an acknowledgement of the Church's role in the harm and pain caused to Indigenous peoples living in this area. Some First Nations peoples are practicing Catholics. For them, they see this as a moment of celebration and acknowledgement, while some community members are angry and still struggling. They do not want to forgive the Church and how the Church's actions changed the trajectory of their lives. For others, the apology is a validation of their experience. It either marks the start of their healing journey or helps them find the closure they need to keep moving forward. For our elders and community members who practice our ancient customs, tradition, and ways of knowing and doing, they are skeptical of what this means. They do not want to hear how they practice spirituality is wrong. They want acceptance. We all pray in our own way and at the same Spirit, the same God. There's a real opportunity for leaders of the Church and of the Indigenous communities to come together and build a bridge of reconciliation. True reconciliation is not a photo opportunity. There's still a great deal of work ahead of us, but it's a good start. There's hope. Healing will happen, not just for us, for the Church also. They need to unlearn their old ways and learn to work together in partnership. This is how we take the steps required towards restoration and reparation. Ishnish.
Thank you. I'd like now to introduce the survivors who are with us today, one by one, who will speak if they choose to. First, Elder and Survivor Rod Alexis from Alexis Nakota Sioux Nation.
You will be the one. Then we will them is watching. You will get in and then when you have them this year, you have them watching. The Wuchua Ode ya borni bishin Kajamta ya Pajab Kuna as Hokunabne Asimjo Nakadun. I guess I'm happy that this is taking place. A time to voice our concerns, our way of life, things that we encountered as we went through residential schools. My parents are survivors of residential school, and I also myself. I remember many of the stories that are told about things that happened. My late dad told me one day, he said, son, I don't know how to be a parent. I lost that gift that was given to us by the Creator because I was all alone in the residential school. You know, many times I wanted to say, I love you, wanted to give you a hug, but I didn't know how. He said that pain hurt inside. Some complained because of physical pain that they encountered in the residential school. But the spiritual and the mental, the emotional pains that we went through are far greater. They try to take away our spirit, what made us strong. And I remember that as I went there, because he was telling me these things. But today, when I look at it, we talk about healing. And I'm glad that this topic's talked about today. I think the journey that we are going to go, it's a long journey. It's not going to be easy. Because some of those wounds are too far gone. And we see our young generations today dying of drugs, alcohol, a lot of them in jails because of the effects of the trauma that they went through. And these are things that we're faced with. How do we deal with it? In order to have reconciliation, you got to have peace within yourself, peace around you. And that peace, people don't understand. They figure it's, to say reconciliation, make it sound it's easy. We think about it. Chimna means think about it. So can you figure out how we're gonna deal with this issue? I look at some of the teachings that we get. We have tremendous teachings. If they allow us to incorporate those things into things that we do, whether it's in the schools or stuff like that, this is where true healing is going to begin. Some that encountered physical abuse, are going to say, well, I didn't deal with it. But the only way they're going to deal with it is they go back to their culture. I am a practicing Catholic Christian person. I go to Mass. I believe in that. But sometimes I'll sit there and I ask the Creator, Wakan, the Mahunino, God, do you hear me? How come? Why did you put us this way? Why are they different? Why are we treated different? What did we do wrong? We opened our hearts to everything. When they came to this land, we showed them how to survive, but in return, they showed us something different. It made it sound like we don't belong. I remember the echoes of my dad, my mom the stories of our people from our community, myself included. Walking the roads, trying to find out where do I fit in. Even today, we still think about that. We go to a restaurant. Sometimes we don't get service. We sit there for hours, no coffee, nothing, and we walk out. That journey is not going to be an easy journey. I thank the Pope for coming down. And it's not only, he carries the burden of the Catholic faith, but Hakoshkabi, the ones that he sent in front, the Catholic faith, they're the ones that did the damage. That's not only the only ones, there's a lot of other ones. This journey, if it's only one part of it, it's in the religious part of it, we heal. We also got to heal in the other areas that we also depend on in our livelihood. This is what this country needs. Do not take away the spirit, the tradition, the souls away from people. And that's what they did to us. Took away our spirit, make it sound like. I remember my first day of school, I asked one of our people, what are we supposed to do? And I was punished because I spoke my language. From that day on, I had to not speak my language. They tried to take that away, but I was stubborn to fight back. Try to keep my language, try to keep some of the culture. Lost a lot of the culture today, starting to learn. And I'm finding the beauty of what we lost. And that beauty is what makes me a stronger Christian today, because I understand the Creator, Arcand. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hear now as well from Elder and Survivor Gordon Burnstick from Alexander First Nation.
Good afternoon. I come from a very large family. My mother had 16 children. My dad had 2 sons along with that, and 1 adopted son. And that's 18 of us, 19 of us, and along with my parents, we were all in residential school. Right from 10 years down to 2 days. We added up our years one time, all of us, and it came up to a little over 100 years. That's 100 years, residential school, 1 family. In 2007, we had a family gathering, and my brother said to my sister, "Sister, I love you, but I don't know you. We grew up in residential school, and we never talked. We never talked to our sisters in there. We come home for the summer for 2 months, and even then I didn't see you. Said, I love you, sister, but I don't know you." Made my sister cry, and it hit me right here. So in 2007, I applied to work with the survivors as a health support. So I've been there for 16 years now and working with survivors. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now take questions from the floor. If you have a question, please raise your hand and we'll bring the microphone to you. And please, I'll remind you, 1 question per media outlet.
Thank you very much to the chiefs and to the elders and survivors. My name is Julian Paparella from Salt and Light Catholic TV, based in Toronto. And we also had the privilege of being with the delegation that went to Rome in March over there. My question is, what would you want to say to the average Canadian and to the average Catholic? What do you want them to know? And what can they do, not only in this week to come, but also for the long path moving forward? What can the average Canadian, the average Catholic do to walk together on this path of reconciliation and healing? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just, there's many things that need to happen right now, whether the average Canadian or Catholic. Some of the work that's happening is, it is public now. So this public apology that is happening, finding the graves, the 215 graves that has happened, what is done is like a ripple effect that filtered throughout the entire country. And as that number grew, more and more people started to participate. And it wasn't only the Indigenous people that were participating. It was the non-Indigenous people that started to get in there and started to learn and understand. You know, it sounded like it only just happened. It's been going on for over 100 years. And so now, how do we move forward? Is we need to start to incorporate that, make it the fabric of the education system that's all across this country, as well as sharing the stories, whether it's at church, whether it's in those communities, however they gather to share these stories, and to not look at it as, you know, they're looking for another apology. No, we're not. The healing is happening within us, but when the apology is made, it's a validation, and that validation is the first step for some people that need that.
Good afternoon, chiefs, elders. Thanks for talking to us today. My name is Cree, reporter for CTV National News. Happy to be here and covering this very important story. I know we're going to get an apology in Maskwacis. What else? It may have been mentioned already, but what else are you looking for from the Pope and from the church out of the Pope coming here?
Thank you for that question. I think it's, you know, it's time to get uncomfortable for many average Canadians, right? That don't, there's two types of ignorance. There's one, I didn't know, and the other side, don't care. So we're trying to address those parts where it's important for people to understand that, you know, they're like what the elders were talking about is that there was pain, you know. I'll tell you, my brother was 16 when he came home. First thing he did is he went and hung himself. He was only 17 years old. So he came home, but he didn't come home. And so we think about all those, what could have happened, how could, if he was still here, his name was Brian. If he was still here, how would his life have transpired and how great of a person he could have been? So those are some of the truths that need to be revealed. And some of us will watch, for myself, to watch the possible 15,000 people sit in front of me to see the expressions on their face, whether it's like a time where they're going to just feel like, oh, this is such a good feeling, or it might go the other way around. So the apology means a great deal for a lot of our nation members, not just in Ermineskin, because a lot of them came from different communities like Alexander and you know, as far north, there's some in the north. So that's important. But the one thing that we want to address to is the doctrine of discovery, the papal bull, that this land wasn't terra nullius. You know, we were here, our people were here. And Chief Tony had mentioned that we greeted them and helped them survive. There's so many contributions that our people have made to the public nationwide, internationally. And I think that's critical. You know, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People mentions that there needs to be a process where information gets out to people and how the education system can make improvements. You know, in Alberta, they've rejected the curriculum from K-3 that this is, children shouldn't hear about this, shouldn't read about this. Why not? There has to be truths. And that's one elder told me, he said, Randy, you're going to be facing the public. There's my story, your story, then there's the truth. How do we address that? So I think that's really critical at this point where there's those TP teaching. You have the first, when you first come in from the left-hand side is, are you ready to listen? You go through all the Cree, the values, and when you walk through the TP, sorry. The last one is, I'm ready to face the world. A lot of our people weren't able to experience those teachings. And now we're going back and saying that we're going to start instilling those teachings to our people, and they're relearning. And we're getting into the education system where we're helping redesign the curriculum to express our stories. So and that's a start, and we have to continue. It's not an easy process, but like I said, but we have to get uncomfortable. I think that's the one of the themes I talked about is that truth, justice, healing, and reconciliation. I believe many people want, but they're not going to come out and express that in public. They want justice. And what is justice, right? We can think about it in many ways, but I believe that people do want justice in their lives so that they can be free to be able to express themselves and why we came on this earth. So it's going to be a painful one, but it's so necessary that justice is at the forefront.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. This is for Chief Randy Ermineskin and Chief Desmond Bull. I'm Julia Wong, a national reporter with CBC News. You both spoke about the toll that this will be taking on the community. I'm wondering what preparations you yourself are taking for your mental health ahead of this visit.
That's a good question, because that's one question I posed to some individuals. What are we doing with the chiefs that have unmarked graves in their community? You know, many people criticize them, even our own people. But I'm glad this past week I finally had an opportunity to meet one of our mental health workers in our community. He came to visit me Sunday because I was getting anxious up until this time, because I thought, you know what, I've been trying to help people be strong, but many times we don't look at ourselves and saying, well, what can we do? So we had a chance, an opportunity, my wife and I, to sit with one professional, and he just kind of slowly talked about, okay, this is what your expectations are going to be. Don't try and come up with solutions at that moment. Wait a while, because trauma it can be a hard thing for many people, and there's cycles that people will go through, including ourselves as leaders, and how are we responding to after this event occurs. We don't want to hurt our own children, because that's what happened with many of the survivors, because they didn't know how to cope. They came home with no tools, how to be able to be, what does a family look like? And what's a Cree family? You know, I'm just saying about the Cree, but we have different nations here, but it's important that we look after one another and the well-being, so that we can survive and also help the future generations overcome this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe if I could just add a bit on to Chief Ermineskin. Sometimes I believe we are too forgiving. We accept sometimes because that's the way we've been brought up. We accept forgiveness and welcome people to our homes, because that's the way our parents taught us, and traditionally those things are still done today. But there needs to be justice. There needs to be an opportunity for the wrongs that were done need to be fixed. We just see this as a first step. It's not the only step. The chiefs have been meeting with Health Canada and Indian Affairs and the papal staff to talk about a partnership. We've not gotten anywhere and nobody's committed, and we've all agreed to gather because we're going to need the support after the visit. So we're not done yet. And I believe that the chiefs, particularly the Confederacy of Treaty 6 chiefs, will continue to push for a longer term strategy with the Government of Canada and the papal staff. We have not gotten so much attention in the last 3 weeks because the Pope has decided to come here. And we've always felt, while we will continue to endure and survive as people within Treaty 6, we will ensure that our people get the services and the support they need, even if we have to use our own resources to do that, because our people are hurting. And we need to fix and change the way our people live in our communities and the way the people of Treaty 6 have been treated for many years. So we do expect justice, and we expect a longer term strategy that we will approach the Prime Minister about in the next short while. And we'll ensure that the Government of Canada is held responsible and works with us in a partnership.
Thank you very much, Chief. My name is Ali Maran with ABC News America. My question is from Grand Chief George. What's your message to your Indigenous counterparts in America who suffered similar treatment in the residential schools?
I believe that historically, the church and the churches have shaped the way we are now. And sometimes the shaping that was done was not done in a good way. So there's a number of issues that need to be dealt with other ethnic groups across the world, and in particularly in North America. And if we can continue to work with those groups to help come to the point where we are, we'll continue to support them. I believe that the church, in their respectful way, is making an apology, but is also, as Chief Tony Alexis pointed out, the church is admitting they were wrong. So it's not just an apology to our people. It's the church itself admitting that they were wrong. That is the important thing. The importance of ensuring that the church is held responsible for what they did.
Thank you for taking my question. My name is Katarina Schultz with CBC News Edmonton. My question is for Grand Chief George Arcand and Chief Randy Ermineskin. I'm just curious, how do you feel about communities fronting the cost of organizing the papal visit? And how confident are you that the church will pay you back?
At this point in time, we're working with a group. This particular group includes the Government of Canada, Alberta, and the papal staff, who are all figuring out ways to provide resources, not only financially, but professionally, for the on-the-ground products that are going to be provided at the event, but also to figure out how Canada can ensure that infrastructure and those types of things are looked after prior to the event. Do we agree that these things should have been done a long time ago? Yes, but they are being done now. And of course, we welcome that because our communities do need infrastructure and do need these types of support services in the community. We will ensure that survivors within Treaty 6 that want to attend will be able to attend, and we will find the resources to make sure that those people are able to attend. Randy?
Well, for us, it's a common thing in our community where we maintain and upkeep our facilities. So we've always done that. And for the government to step in and help us with the road, we were planning to do that. And they agreed to come in and say, we'll assist you. So we can't turn that away. But it's only because the road that exists there is to a school. And we always were worried about, we need to look at the safety of all people driving and going back and forth, and that's by the school. But it's mainly for the safety of all persons. And then we welcome that the thought of them stepping in and helping us at this time. But we did plan to do that all along.
Hi there, it's Jeremy Thompson with CTV News Edmonton. Thanks for taking my question. It's for anyone who wants to answer. Earlier today, Chief Saddleback with Samson Cree Nation mentioned that he's hopeful that this papal visit and especially the apology can sort of be a turning point for Indigenous peoples in Canada. So I'm wondering, do you share that hope? And if you do, what's your sort of vision for how things can change from here?
Thank you for the question. I think, as I said before, this is a very good start and where we need to be in regards to reparation and in regards to reconciliation. For me, I think, there's some steps that need to be taken within this country. I think people need to realize and recognize when they see a Métis or an Inuit or a First Nations person battling with addictions, whether it be drugs or alcohol, that person does not want to be there. That person is a survivor. A person is a survivor also of intergenerational trauma. So when you see that person, that person is dealing and coping with some loss that they have endured. So I want to keep hope Canadians keep that in mind when they see this. It's something that our people use as a mechanism to cope with. When we talk about forgiveness and even justice, I think the best way to look at it is not to want sympathy, but to encourage empathy. Think about yourself as a parent. How would you feel, if somebody came in, took your children away, RCMP there, ready to arrest you if you do anything in regards to making sure that child is home? That sense of empathy, goes a lot further than sympathy. It shows the fact that, we did suffer these hardships. And when a person puts themselves in that type of situation, whether they feel that, knowing that if somebody took their child, it shows that, that trauma can happen to anyone. And I just hope, we all in this country, work toward that common interest of learning more about each other, and putting this history in a forefront as part of that discussion is part of that healing process for us. It was asked earlier, what are you doing to heal? I'm very fortunate that I have family, friends, loved ones, and listen to people. But in the end, it's that healing process that has to work together within this country. And I think that truth and reconciliation and calls to actions, especially in learning about who we are as an ancestral people, our history, our language and culture, go a lot further in that healing process. So this is something I wanted to share. And I thank you for the question. Hi.
So just to let you know, we have time for one more question from the floor, and then we'll go briefly to online questions.
Tansi, my name is Chris from APTN. My question is for Elder Burnstick. With so many siblings, have you talked to them about what their feelings are towards the upcoming Pope's visit? Is there anger or is there more reconciliation?
We spoke some, not everyone will share their experiences. I have one brother. You go to his place, he'll go out the back door and walk into the bush. He doesn't like to talk to too many people, so. But we're slowly talking about it. We're slowly talking to our children about it and what happened to us in there. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions from the room, and thank you for the answers as well. We're going to go now to journalists online, and we'll begin with Carrie Tate from the Globe and Mail.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I'm wondering, this might be for Chief Tony, but any of you are, who it fits with, please feel free to jump in. I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about, elaborate on the importance of Lac St. Anne, perhaps if there's a memory of the spirituality tied to your culture. If you can tell us a little bit more about that, please. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Lac St. Anne, as I mentioned, to us, we in our community call it Wakamne, God's Lake. For a long time, our people went to that land. It had healing properties. It also had stories that we have going back for many years about how there was a spirit that was on the lake. You could hear the drumming on the lake, and there's an entire story that we share from that. And for us, the Indigenous community used to gather there before the missionaries came, and it was an opportunity for trade. And it was at a time when there would be celebrations, or the tough winter season, the springtime and the summer, people would gather there. So it was a very special place for the Indigenous community. And then when the missionaries came, the pilgrimage started, more and more people started to visit. And you could see when you come to the shrine that there's crutches, there's canes, there's even wheelchairs that are put up there, how people came there in that, and then they left walking on their own. And so it's always been a special place like that. And every year, thousands of people, tens and thousands of people gather there all the time. And for Pope Francis to make the visit, to step on that land, to be with the people is something that all the pilgrims who go there every year, it's a prayer that's been answered for them. Thank you.
We're going next to Al Jazeera English, Anwar Virji of Al Jazeera.
Hi, thanks so much for doing this and for talking about mental health and for taking care of your mental health. I wanted to know, and this question can go to whoever wants to answer it. Has the Catholic Church committed to contributing to programs to address mental health in your communities after the visit is over?
There's two parts to the mental health issue. Chief George Arcand here. First one is that once we heard that there may be an opportunity for the Pope to come, and our group went to Rome and got confirmation. Immediately after that, the First Nations in Alberta and Health Canada started working at gathering support workers from across Canada to ensure that, number one, we had the capacity. We found two things. Number one, we don't have the capacity in our communities or outside our communities to deal with the mental health and the stress that's happening now. So we immediately brought that to the group or the committee to say that there's some issues. The first issue is we need to create capacity in our communities, but not only within our communities, but all of Canada. There appears to be issues surrounding on how we deal with supportive services. Now, on the professional side, there's a lot of support, but on the liaison and the lay services, those things still need new capacity. So we have talked to the Government of Canada and to the Archdiocese here in Alberta to talk about ensuring that we continue this discussion after the visit. They've committed to have a continual discussion, but at this point in time, have not committed to any resourcing of that nature.
And for our last question, we'll go online to Mary Pember from ICT in the United States.
Hi, bonjour, Anine. This is Mary Pember Ojibwe from Red Cliff, Ojibwe, Wisconsin. And as you probably know, there were far more Catholic operated boarding schools in the United States, over 120, and our system predated Canada's. In fact, Canada looked to the United States for guidance on creating their system, but yet there's been almost zero recognition or acknowledgement of that here in the US. And particularly by the Catholic Church. Do you think that the Pope should consider including US Indigenous people who often are members of the same tribes there in Canada, if he should include us in his apology?
Well, that's a good question, right? Because as we're speaking, there's a contingent of members from the US coming. And my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law are arranging that. They're from North Dakota, and they wanted a personal invite from me, but it's not about me. It's the Pope coming to visit, so they're welcome. And I think the announcements have been made. They're welcome from coast to coast to coast, and I think that's important that we know that it started from the U.S. But when you look at the history, it's the punishment that the way they were treating the people. They said, well, we need another model, and they went to France and looked at that model, and that was about punishment. So we looked at that and studied that and said, you know what, there are some harms that have been done, and I think that all First Nations across North America or Turtle Island need to be included, and that's why we couldn't hold anybody, we couldn't keep anybody away. They're welcome to come, and wherever we can fit them in. I think that's so important, and I'm happy that you brought that up, because that's a part of history that has not been told in the US, and then they need to do that.
Thank you very much. That brings this press conference to a close. Thank you to the journalists in attendance and online. Thank you for your questions. And thank you also to our honored guests, the chiefs and the survivors, for your patience and courage. Thank you.